yourself on this, if you would, please. Coach, make an opening statement. Open up for questions.
All right, y'all ready? Got Tennessee and Knoxville on the SEC Network. This game in my time at South Carolina in 3 years has been decided by 12 points. It's a hard-fought game. We've got a lot of respect for the University of Tennessee, their program, and what Coach Pruitt's doing. And we need to expect another four-quarter game, and we certainly do. The last two games, I think you've seen this team make a lot of improvement. You watch the Mississippi State game and you watch the Alabama game. They play well on the line of scrimmage. They're very physical in how they run the football. They're very talented outside at the receiver position. They're playing well up front defensively. They're active at linebacker, and I think they're extremely talented in the secondary, and Jeremy does a really good job with that. Obviously, some uncertainty at the quarterback position, but I think they've got talent there. Running backs run extremely hard, as I said earlier. Chandler and Jordan and those guys. Eric Gray's a young man that we recruited. I think their offensive line played their best ball game last week against Alabama. Got a lot of movement in the run game and did a good job for the most part protecting the quarterback. They're extremely talented at the receiver position. Juwan Jennings is a guy that I've got a lot of respect for, and you've seen him compete on the field for their football team. Extremely impressed with him. And Marquez Callaway and Palmer and Bird are all guys that have played a lot of football for them. Dominic Wood-Anderson's a talented tight end for them that we recruited here as well. A guy that we've got a lot of respect for. Defensively, as I said earlier, they're playing much improved up front defensively as far as playing blocks up front and getting pressure on the quarterback. Darrell Taylor leads them in sacks, has been a guy that's a really good pass rusher that gives a good edge presence for them. Daniel Batuli at linebacker has been a guy that's played a lot, and I'm very talented in the secondary. Talented specialist and really good team speed. Injury-wise, Rico's got a sprained knee. He is moving around a little bit. I don't know that he'll be available this weekend, but he is moving around. There's no surgery required, but I don't know a timetable, but my guess would be probably not for this weekend. A.J. Turner has a little bit of a hamstring, and I'll know more probably Wednesday on his status for the game. Other than that, we should be fine, and I'll open it up for any questions.
Raise your hand and get a microphone to you, Dave.
Well, you look at a guy like Mon Denson, who's pretty much produced every time he's gotten the ball.
Yeah.
But, how tough has it been for him to kind of always be in that waiting game? Because there's always been a couple of guys ahead of him.
It's frustrating. It's hard to play three backs, and he's certainly been deserving. But another great example of a great teammate that has waited his turn and has been very productive when he's had his opportunities. He's been a very productive member of our special teams unit, and we're extremely pleased with with him, and we're excited about him playing on Saturday. There's no doubt about it, and he'll play well.
Coach, like you said, we've seen this Tennessee team get better and better each week. What have you seen as going to be the biggest challenge come this weekend, especially being in Knoxville?
Well, I think they're playing really well on the line of scrimmage. I said earlier, I thought the offensive line probably played its best game on Saturday against Alabama, and they're continuing to play well on defense. They gave Mississippi State fits. They did a good job against Alabama defensively. They're very talented on the back end. So I think overall we got to put together four quarters and play well.
Some of the concerns that you addressed with the SEC this week?
Well, I haven't really heard from the SEC since Sunday night, so I'm still waiting for word.
Was it something that was it over the officiating on Saturday, and can you tell us maybe what they said to you on Sunday?
Well, really, as far as my schedule is concerned, when the game was over, I come and grade the film. And I go through all three phases, offense, defense, and special teams Saturday night. Happened to go home that night, and Alabama and Tennessee were on, so I wanted to watch a little bit of that game to get a little flavor of a live copy of the Tennessee, watching them on a TV copy. Get up in the morning, you come in, and you rewatch our film again in all three phases to make sure we didn't miss anything. You meet with the offensive staff, defensive staff, and the special team staff. You meet with our entire staff. We had some recruits in. And then we go to a 3:30 team meeting, which I'll talk about later. And then we have a practice and a walkthrough, and then we have a 6:30 press conference call with you guys, right? Well, once that happens, we're on to the next game. So I've been totally focused on Tennessee. I jotted some notes down from Sunday that I felt, and then I got a text from Commissioner Sankey Sunday night that they were still in the review process, and they're still working through that, I'm assuming. I know that Coach Tanner has been tirelessly working for us and getting some answers about what occurred on Saturday, And I know he's representing us in a first-class manner, and he's obviously very upset, as a lot of us are, with some occurrences on Saturday afternoon. So we're still working through that at this time.
Well, what have you seen from R.J. Roderick in the time that since he's been kind of moved to that starting safety spot?
RJ's played, has really done some really nice things for us. And I think that the biggest thing that I would say, and I would say to you, but I say to RJ all the time, is consistency in your performance. Down in, down out, consistency in your performance. And those are the things that I think that he could take the next step, because I think he's a really talented guy. He has good speed. He has good physicality as far as tackling and playing blocks. He's got a really good competitive edge, and I think that sometimes in my mind, and I get a little ahead of myself with RJ, he didn't play any defensive back till he got to South Carolina. He was an option quarterback at Cane Bay High School. And so there's a lot of firsts for him last year. And now as you're going into this year, there's a lot of things at the defensive back safety position that are things that are natural, but there's some things you have to learn. And a lot of his learning was by fire last year, and putting in the situation that he was put into. So, again, I'm, been pleased as how he's continued to progress as the season has gone. He's improved each week, and we expect for him to continue to play well.
It was announced today that DJ is nominated for the National Comeback Player of the Year. What does that award say to him, about him, not only as a player but as a person?
Well, DJ is first class of young man you'll meet as far as all of the intangible qualities you want in a son. But just the Wanham family overall, Dennis Sr. and Consuelo are great people. And Dylan, and obviously disappointed for him with the injury, but it's a great family, and nothing. I don't know that there's enough adjectives I have that could describe DJ Wanham and the type young man he is, what he stands for. He's a really good football player. He's an even better person, and he's got great leadership ability and great leadership qualities. He's one of 3 people in school history to be elected team captain as a true sophomore. That says a lot about the respect of his teammates and the staff here.
Will, obviously Ryan had some struggles throwing the ball last week. Was the knee a factor in any of that, and how has he kind of bounced back this week or responded this week?
I thought he looked the best he's looked on a Tuesday practice since the injury. And, again, I think, Pete, let's be fair here, there wasn't all on Ryan. There was some things there could have been a flatter route on one of the deep balls. I mean, there were some things that we could have done better around him. But he'd be the first person to tell you that we need to be more accurate throwing the football. But I thought he had a really good Tuesday practice today. He was sharp throwing the football. He looked bouncing around in the pocket, but as healthy as he's been. And I don't think there's any question, but we're all sore right now. We all got some ailments right now. And but he's a competitor, and he's going to battle through it.
Going back to Rico, how much of a relief was it for you and the staff, and of course him, knowing that it wasn't as bad as maybe it could have been?
Well, there's no question. That guy's been through a lot. He's had some very more legitimate injuries than you'd like to have a young man have. And so very, very relieved that he's not going to have surgery, and hopefully we'll get him back sooner than later.
Well, you kind of touched on this already, but what are some of the other things you think you can do to create more of a vertical passing game? I know it was there at times. It's just, maybe maybe the wet ball had something to do with that too, but the deep shots, just for some reason the timing didn't work out. But what are some of the things that you guys can do to create more of the vertical passing game?
Well, I think turns and reps. I think that's the big thing that we work on deep balls a lot, and then we knew going into that game that they were going to crowd the box and we were going to have to complete some balls down the field. So I think that just continue turns and reps and with the right guys, and we took 2 with Shy, I believe, and 1 with Brian. We had Brian on another one. We because of protection, we couldn't get it off. But we had some things dialed up in the game. We hit the second play of the game, the flea flicker. It was a well-thrown ball to Brian. So we certainly have the capabilities to hit some of those. We hit them in practice a lot, and we've hit them in some games. We just got to be more consistent. And, you change the complexion of the game, you hit 1 or 2 of those. That's the thing, but we didn't. So that's the bottom line. It's a results deal, and we didn't get it done.
One quick clarification and then a separate question. You are expecting to hear back from the SEC?
Well, I would hope so.
Okay. On Sedarius Hutcherson, when you got here 2016 and they said that guy's an offensive lineman, what did you think?
Well,
Based-
no, we
based on
started,
his size.
We started recruiting him when I got here.
Okay.
So he was in Huntington, Tennessee, between Nashville and Memphis. I would guess he was 230, maybe.
Right.
He probably could clarify that better than I would be.
236, I think, is the
236.
number.
Well, I was 6 pounds off.
Not bad. I mean, that's pretty good.
I
Yes.
stink at that
You
stuff.
could do the fair thing. You could go
Yeah.
do the fair. Probably.
Is it still going on?
I think so.
Awesome. Yeah. Got some corn dogs and everything. Be a hell of a day. But he was a guy that athletically jumped out at you on tape. His feet, his athleticism, just was extremely impressive on tape. And that's the thing you see: his balance, his athleticism, and then you got to project. And when you see Sedarius, he's got wide shoulders, he's got 10-inch hand, he's got long arms. I think his arms are 34, 35. So you feel like he had the frame to continue to grow. And we felt like at that time, and Sean was the offensive line coach, we needed to continue to get more athletic on the offensive line, and certainly took a reach with him a little bit. Certainly we've benefited from that because he's come in and bought in completely on the nutrition part of it, on the things that he's got to do to be successful. And you really got to credit him. He's done a great job in the weight room. He's a powerful guy. He had really good lower body flexibility. When we first recruited him, which I think is always a key, and especially in a line of scrimmage player. He played on both sides of the ball in high school. But a guy that's really dedicated himself to the weight room. He understood the things he's got to do because of the size he was and where he's got to go. Now, I do remember when we brought him on his official visit, a couple of the kids were like, is he a tight end? And I'm like, no, he's going to be an offensive tackle.
Yeah.
But sometimes you got to project. There's a stat, and I'll get the numbers wrong. Like the last 4 years in the NFL draft of the first 3 rounds, none of the offensive linemen that were drafted weighed over 300 pounds when they were in high school.
Okay.
And that's, you may want to research that. I may be wrong exactly on the stats or the rounds that they talked about, but I remember that jumped out at me the last year in the recruiting process in recruiting offensive linemen. Sometimes guys have peaked where they are, their growth potential, and they're not going to improve as they get on campus. So sometimes you've got to project a little bit on some guys that have great athleticism that maybe play on the defensive side of the ball in high school, and you're going to project them to the offensive guys. Now, they don't want to hear that, most of them, when you're recruiting them. But, we've told several guys in the recruiting process, the only way we're going to recruit you here is if you're willing to be an offensive lineman. They tell you no, you move to the next guy. But Sedarius has been a guy that, athletically, length, athleticism, very bright and intelligent, and we've been very pleased with him.
How'd you find him in Huntington?
We watched a lot of tape. We went to Sean Elliott, and I went to his high school, and we couldn't find him in the school. And they've got an FFA, Future Farmers of America, there.
Yeah.
And he was in the back chasing chickens in the barn. It's a true story.
Oh, I believe
like
you.
like a mile and a half of a dirt road to find the guy at the school.
Kind of like a Rocky thing with the footwork, where he chased the chicken.
I don't know if he was just like for class or something. I guess they had to put him in a cage. I guess I don't know. Or maybe you can't put him in a cage anymore. I don't know that.
I'm not sure. Has he made more progress than anybody in your career in the weight room? Physically, has he come the
I don't
farthest?
know about that. He's made a lot of progress. I don't want to say more than anyone. That'd be hard to put a figure on that.
Well, just when you look back at the recruitment process of J.C. Horn, what stands out, sort of having gone through that, especially when it came to Tennessee's role in that?
Well, I don't know. I knew Alabama and Tennessee, and I guess we were the last 3 people that he was interested in. I don't really focus on the other teams in recruiting. I focus on South Carolina and what we need to do to be successful, and what we need to do to appeal to a young man to make him feel like South Carolina could be a good situation for him. He was a very easy guy to recruit because he wasn't a guy that you had to sit there and call all the time and text all the time and do all that sort of business. He was a very low maintenance guy to recruit. Joe, his dad, was great. His mom was great in the process. They wanted JC to make the best decision for him, and they trusted him to make the best decision. And so that's kind of how things transpired.
You have 2 pretty new guards this year. Where have you seen their most growth over the course of the season, and how much has having Donnell in between them helped those guys?
Well, I don't think you could ever sell short the job that Donnell does. and he's been very valuable for us, and the communication factors up front for both young players. I would probably say, John, as much as anything, it's a calming factor involved in that as far as getting to the line of scrimmage and ID in the front and making the protection or the run game calls or whatever we've got going on. I think both Javon and Jordan Rhodes have both benefited from Donnell, but both have learned to communicate much better up front and making those communications. I think both guys have excelled in run blocking. I think there's some things as far as pass protection is concerned that we need to continue to improve on. But I think both of those guys have excelled in the run game as far as run blocking is concerned.
Will, you obviously went through this last week in prepping for two quarterbacks, and you said that Florida usually doesn't change what they do no matter who's in. Does Tennessee have that same do? They change what they do depending on who's under center?
Doesn't seem like it to me. I think, again, Maurer and Garantano have played most of the snaps, and Shroud's played a little bit, I think 25 snaps for the season. So all three guys are very similar in that, right?
It's a general question, but when it comes to coaching your defenders how to guard against rub routes, pick routes, whatever you want to call it, what are some of the main
blocking or rubbing?
Whatever you want to call it.
Okay.
Well, what are the main coaching points for those as you're trying to
Well,
get
number
ready?
one, generally splits is a the receiver split is a indicator, and obviously we spend a lot of time watching film with our players, and you try to identify tight splits. You try to identify, those sort of things where there's an indication that maybe we're able to play in and out, which means we're going to play based on the break of a receiver, play one in and one out. So we're playing kind of what I would say a combo coverage in that situation. Or we're going to say that, based on the split or whoever is on the line of scrimmage, that we want to lock it. And that means we're going to lock on our receivers and we're going to stay with who we have based on the release doesn't matter anymore. So those are things we need to be able to do. But if we're going to lock it, then you've got to fight through the screen. And we always talk in terms of tailpiping a receiver, which means it's like playing off man-to-man basketball. As a guy's running and you're getting screens, you've got to get right behind the receiver and just run through his back as he continues to run through. Because if you get on a second level, you will get picked off in those situations. And in in-and-out situations, you've got to be able to leverage the double in and the double out, which are very difficult when you're playing an in-and-out situation. And that's what a lot of offenses try to create, a 7-cut and an out cut. Because the inside guy's going to have the 7-cut, and he's battling from inside out to make the play.
Then I guess the communication between the two or three, however many guys are involved, communication is a big part and all that on the field.
Huge part. You've got to be able to and it's got to be communication pre-snap wise of us all being on the same page in what we're trying to do. Yep.
Will, is there any common thread to the fact that you haven't lost to Tennessee
No.
since being a coach?
No.
Is there ever, do you get any confidence coming into this week that, hey, some of my guys know what it takes to be successful in
No,
this?
it's every week's a season. New week this week. New season this week.
We've talked a lot about the vertical passing game, but are you pleased with how explosive your offense has been this year? And if not, I guess just what's the reason for it?
We've missed some things down the field. I think we've continued to progress week in, week out, running the football. We haven't been as consistent throwing the football. And that's something we've got to continue to work on. And I think that, we tried to, each Sunday we try to narrow some things down and what we do well, what we feel comfortable with doing. And we've continued to work on those things. And that's something that, at the end of the day, we've got to hit some of the vertical balls down the field. It's not the lack of we haven't taken some shots. We have taken some shots. We've tried to stretch the field vertically. We've tried to create some one-on-ones. Florida's really good. Both corners are really good players. They both had some tight coverage in some situations, and we got to throw the ball in some tight areas, when you've got those coverage. So those are things to me that we're certainly more than capable of doing, and we need to perform better in those situations.
I think on Sunday you mentioned when you were talking about the passing game, the phrase I think you used was misrun routes. And I wanted to ask, when something like that happens, is that a communication issue? Is that a reading the defense issue? What sort of happens in those?
Well, we might have a built-in hot based on a pressure, and sometimes we don't always see the hot, whether it's the receiver or the quarterback. We might have run a route at the wrong depth, and suddenly the ball is coming out, and it looks kind of funny that the ball was coming out and the receiver's still maintaining the route down the field. So it might not have necessarily been on the quarterback; it might have been on the receiver. So there's a number of different issues that present itself in the passing game, whether it's protection, it could have been the route, it could have been the accuracy of the throw, in a lot of situations.
Well, after Saturday's game, you talked about how Florida made more of those key plays, or I guess game-changing plays, than your guys. When you look at the history of the South Carolina-Tennessee series, with so many close games being decided, last possession, final minute, is this a week that maybe you stress even more importance to your guys about, hey, be the guy, you could have that one play that could decide the game or win this game for us?
Well, I say it every week. You got to put yourself in the moment of 3-4 minutes left in the game, critical third down. We got to stay on the field offensively. We got to get off the field on defense. We're in the red zone, but always, play the game in your mind mentally. Put yourself in the moment to put yourself in those situations. In our time here at South Carolina, we're 14-6 in one-score games. That's really good. It's making good decisions as players. It's making good decisions as coaches, and we've got to continue to do so.
Well, how have you seen Ryan grow from when he first got on campus? And as a freshman, sometimes, of course, I don't think anyone's really would call him a freshman at this point because he's midway through the season. How do you continue to help him and get him back, continue just those teaching moments?
Well, I think whether it's the quarterback position or whatever position it is, there's a lot of firsts these guys go through. A lot of firsts, a lot of seeing this for the first time, seeing this pressure for the first time, seeing this exotic two-trap for the first time. So you can't get enough time to teach. You can't get enough time to watch film. You can't get enough time to rep, especially at that position, because it affects everybody. And so I think he's continued to grow and mature, and he's worked extremely hard in the weight room, and in the film room, on the practice field. He's got a great competitive edge about himself, and he'll continue to progress, and we're excited about his future.
Coach, you guys broke out a little run game wrinkle. I think you ran it on the first play and then ran it a few other times, I guess. What did you feel like made that so effective, and were you pleased with kind of how it worked out?
Well, I think, again, you go into every week with try to create some different wrinkles in the passing game and the throwing game to, take advantage of matchups. And that was a good plan by our offensive staff. It was a run that was very successful for us in the game. Something that they saw during game preparation that they felt comfortable that they could exploit.
After Rico went down on the first play of the game last week, how comforting was it to have Feaster over there and to see him have a breakout game like he did?
There's no doubt. He's a very talented guy, and Mon is as well. So when you have depth at a position like that, as a coach, it makes you feel good to know that you're gonna have quality production at the position. Regardless of who's in the game. And certainly we have that at that position.
Will, Ryan looked so good against Alabama. Has there been one common thread to where he hasn't been as good in these past three games outside of injury?
No, I think that obviously the knee was, affected him. And, again, it's what he's doing is very difficult. He's a freshman quarterback in the Southeastern Conference. You go on the road in our league, there's a lot of difficulty in what we're asking him to do, and that's very hard. And so there's been more good moments than bad, I can assure you of that. So, and we're expecting even more so as we continue to move forward.
What has Ortre showed you in the way that he's sort of come through and dealt with this injury that he's had and dealt with maybe slower progress coming back than he might have hoped, and sort of the way he's still worked with the receivers and I guess not just kind of how he's kind of dealt with it?
Well, again, it's extremely frustrating. He had a very serious injury. It was a sublux kneecap, which is very painful. Number one, and it's about a 6-month recovery. But you say it's a 6-month recovery, but when you're a skill player in the Southeastern Conference, to get back to your normal speed, it takes even more so. And we've sort of seen that with him. He's worked extremely hard for it. It has been frustrating for him. It's been frustrating for everybody because we need him back to his first year and how he played, and he was a very productive football player for us. And he's worked extremely hard to put himself in the type shape that he was before and played at a high level. Yeah.
You mentioned the Sunday team meeting a little bit earlier. I guess just what was the message to the team coming off that, and is there any kind of residual effects from the Saturday game going into that Sunday meeting?
No, I mean, I think as much as anything, just in, identifying with the players the things we need to do to be successful moving forward. And that's kind of the things that we hit on. Control what we can control and move forward in the right direction.
Anything else for Coach? Anything else?
Thank you.